Welcome to the Forgotten Narrator. Alright, let's talk about the terrifying reality-warping nightmares that lurk beyond the veil of real space, the creatures of the warp, unbound by chaos. These are not just monsters or mindless horrors. They are living embodiments of madness, rage, desire, and decay, each one a fragment of the greater malevolent intelligence that is chaos itself. Some are vast and godlike, others are subtle and insidious, but all of them share one thing. They exist to corrupt, consume, and destroy. But what exactly are these entities? How do they manifest? And what happens when the boundaries between their world and ours begin to crumble? To understand the full scale of their terror, we need to start with the warp itself, the hellish, ever-shifting realm from which they are born. If you want to understand the creatures of the warp, you first have to understand the warp itself. And trust me, that's no easy task. The immaterium isn't just another dimension. It's a realm of raw, uncontrolled thought, a swirling storm of emotion that underlies reality itself. It's not bound by time, space, or even logic as we know it. It's a place where nightmares become real, where gods are born from belief, and where the laws of the universe collapse under the weight of sheer madness. Some people like to think of the warp as just a tool, a means to travel faster than light or a source of power for psychers. That's the most dangerous misconception anyone can have. The warp is alive in a way, but not like any living thing we understand. It doesn't have a singular will or consciousness, but it reacts to the emotions and actions of sentient beings. Every war, every act of cruelty, every moment of despair or hatred ripples through the warp like a stone dropped in water, distorting it, feeding it, making it stronger. The immaterium is both shaped by and shapes those who interact with it, an endless cycle of corruption and influence that no one truly controls, not even the chaos gods themselves. One of the most terrifying aspects of the warp is how deeply it's tied to the minds of mortals. It's often said that every living soul casts a reflection into the immaterium. That means that the more sentient life spreads, the stronger and more chaotic the warp becomes. It's a dark mirror of reality, filled with echoes of every fear, every passion, every desire that has ever existed. And when these emotions become intense enough, whether through sheer belief, widespread suffering, or unrestrained excess, they can take form, becoming something new, something independent. That's how demons are born. That's how chaos itself grows. But here's where things get even stranger. Time doesn't work in the warp the way it does in real space. There are stories of ships that have entered the warp and emerged centuries later, their crews unchanged. Others have vanished for what felt like days, only to return and find that millennia have passed. Some ships have even encountered themselves, twisted, ruined versions of their own future or echoes of their past. It's a place where paradoxes aren't just possible, they're inevitable. And if you think that's unsettling, consider this. Many believe the warp is also where souls go when they die. There's no single answer to what happens after death in Warhammer 40k, but countless cultures, both human and Xenos, have myths about the warp being some kind of afterlife. The Eldar, for example, are absolutely terrified of what awaits them there. Thanks to their ancient sins, the excess that birthed Slaanesh, they know that their souls are doomed to be devoured the moment they leave their bodies. That's why they rely on spirit stones and infinity circuits, desperately trying to keep themselves out of the warp's grasp. The Imperium, on the other hand, believes that the Emperor protects, that the faithful will find peace in his light, while the unworthy are left to be consumed by demons. Whether that's true or not, well, let's just say the warp isn't known for being merciful. This is what makes the warp so terrifying. It's not just a place. It's a force, a presence that can touch anyone, anywhere. It whispers in the minds of psychers, it seeps into the darkest corners of the galaxy, and it's always hungry. The more people fear it, the stronger it becomes. The more people deny it, the easier it is for it to creep into their reality. There's no escaping it, not really. Even the Necrons, who strip themselves of their souls to become immune to its influence, are still forced to reckon with the warp's existence. And the worst part? It's growing. The birth of Slaanesh was proof that the warp isn't static, that it can change, evolve, become something even more monstrous. And as the galaxy spirals further into war, suffering, and madness, the warp is only getting stronger. The Great Rift, the endless tide of warp storms, the rising number of psychers, it's all connected. Some even believe that one day the warp will consume everything, drowning real space in an eternal chaotic nightmare from which there is no escape. So, is the warp just another dimension? No, it's something far worse. It's the collective madness of the galaxy, given form and power beyond comprehension. It's a realm where gods rise and fall, where reality bends and shatters, and where the creatures lurking in its depths are always looking for a way in. And if there's one thing you can be sure of, it's that the warp never stays contained for long. If the warp was just a storm of psychic energy, it would already be terrifying enough. But the reality is so much worse, because the warp is *alive*. It's filled with entities, some nameless and mindless, others ancient and malevolent beyond human comprehension. Some are no more than flickers of thought, while others are true gods, feeding off the emotions of the galaxy and shaping reality to their will. And the worst part? These creatures are never satisfied. They are always reaching, always hungering, always looking for a way to spill into real space and claim it as their own. The most infamous inhabitants of the warp are, of course, the Chaos Gods. Khorne, the Blood God, who embodies war, rage, and slaughter. Tzeentch, the architect of fate, who thrives on change, deceit, and endless schemes. Nurgle, the Lord of Decay, who delights in despair, entropy, and the inevitability of death. And Slaanesh, the Dark Prince, who was born from excess and indulgence, feasting on pleasure, pain, and obsession. Each of these gods is more than just a powerful being. They asterisk the emotions they represent. They don't just influence the galaxy, they asterisk shaped by it. Every act of violence strengthens Khorne. Every lie whispered in the dark feeds Tzeentch's endless plots. Nurgle swells with every moment of hopelessness, and Slaanesh grows whenever desire overcomes restraint. But the Chaos Gods are just the beginning. For every god, there are their servants, legions of demons, created from the raw stuff of the warp and shaped in the image of their dark masters. These demons aren't just mindless beasts. They have personalities, desires, and goals. A bloodletter of Khorne exists for one purpose: to spill blood and claim skulls for the throne of his god. A Lord of Change, the greatest of Tzeentch's demons, is an impossibly intelligent, ever-shifting creature, a master manipulator who sees reality itself as a puzzle to be twisted into new and terrible forms. And let's not even start on the Keepers of Secrets, Slaanesh's greater demons who move with unnatural grace, speaking in voices that drive mortals to insanity, promising pleasure so perfect it becomes indistinguishable from agony. But here's the thing. Demons aren't even the only creatures in the warp. There are things in there that don't serve the Chaos Gods, things that have no name, no allegiance, just hunger. The formless wastes of the warp are filled with horrors that drift through the tides of madness, their very existence an insult to sanity. These aren't demons in the traditional sense, because they weren't created by the will of a Chaos God. Instead, they are the leftovers, the wild, uncontrolled manifestations of the warp itself, thoughts and emotions that gain just enough form to exist but not enough to serve a master. Then there are the enslavers, parasitic nightmares that don't just exist in the warp, but actively cross over into real space to claim new victims. These creatures don't fight, don't wage war, don't even negotiate. They simply infect. They latch onto psychers, corrupting their minds and turning them into living gateways, opening holes in reality so more of their kind can pour through. Some say they are remnants of an ancient horror, older even than the Eldar or humanity, a species that once ruled the galaxy before being driven back into the depths of the immaterium. Others believe they are just another consequence of the warp's instability, a natural predator that exists purely to hunt those foolish enough to dabble in psychic power. And let's not forget about the nameless things, the ones that don't have a place in the grand hierarchies of chaos, the ones that lurk in the deep corners of the immaterium, waiting. Some whisper of entities that even the chaos gods fear, ancient things that existed before mortal thought gave birth to the ruinous powers. There are records, half-mad ravings really, of ships lost in the warp encountering something so alien, so completely beyond reason, that even demons fled before it. Some call them the dark gods, others believe they are the echoes of civilizations long dead, their psychic remnants congealing into new and terrible forms. Whatever they are, one thing is certain. The warp is far bigger, far darker, and far more unknowable than even the chaos gods would have you believe. This is what makes the immaterium so horrifying. It's not just a realm of madness, but a place where that madness takes asterisk shape asterisk, where thoughts can kill, where emotions can manifest as living horrors, where the very act of believing in something can make it real. The creatures of the warp are not just nightmares. They are the raw distilled essence of every nightmare the galaxy has ever had. They are the worst parts of us, given form, given power, and given the endless, insatiable desire to tear down everything we know. And the worst part? They're winning. Every day, every battle, every moment of suffering makes them stronger. The warp is growing, and its creatures are no longer content to remain trapped within it. The walls between dimensions are weakening, and the things that wait in the darkness are closer than ever to breaking through. And when they do, when the creatures of the warp are truly unbound, there will be no stopping them. Demons are not like any other life forms in the galaxy. They aren't born, they don't grow, they don't die, not in the way mortals understand it. A demon is not a creature in the traditional sense. It's a manifestation, a shard of something much greater, a living embodiment of the raw, uncontrollable power of the warp. It has no true form, no singular existence. It is the warp, and the warp is it. And that's what makes them so terrifying. To understand demons, you have to let go of the idea that they are just monsters. A demon is an extension of its god, a sliver of chaos given individual thought and purpose. It has no free will, no true independence, only the illusion of it. A bloodletter of Khorne doesn't choose to seek battle and slaughter. It is battle and slaughter distilled into a physical form. A demonette of Slaanesh doesn't just enjoy excess, it is excess, the very concept of pleasure turned into flesh. And the moment their god decides they are no longer useful, they can be unmade, their essence absorbed back into the endless tides of the warp. To be a demon is to be nothing more than a thought, a powerful thought, a dangerous thought, but still just a fragment of something far beyond mortal comprehension. So how are they born? The simple answer is that they are created when the emotions and beliefs of mortals reach a certain intensity. The warp is shaped by thought, and when an idea becomes strong enough, when enough people feed into a particular emotion or belief, it can take form. That's how the Chaos Gods themselves came to be. Khorne was born from war, from every act of bloodshed, every moment of rage that ever existed. Tzeentch rose from schemes and ambitions, from every whispered lie and desperate hope. Slaanesh was birthed from the excess and decadence of the Eldar, a god formed from a civilization's collective indulgence. And once these gods took shape, they began creating servants in their own image, demons who embodied their nature in ways that even they could not. But here's the terrifying part. Demons aren't limited to just the gods that create them. The more they act, the more mortals fear or worship them, the stronger they become. A demon that feeds on suffering, for example, can continue to grow as long as there is suffering in the world. And if it grows strong enough, if it is feared and known widely enough, it can begin to take on a kind of autonomy. Some demons, like the infamous Kor, have managed to carve out their own place in the hierarchy of chaos, existing outside the direct control of any one god. Others become legends, whispered names that pass from world to world, their power increasing with every soul that believes in them. That's the nightmare of chaos. It spreads like a disease, infecting minds, corrupting souls, making itself real through the sheer weight of belief. The more you fear it, the stronger it becomes. And demons live for that. They don't just kill for the sake of killing. They kill because every scream, every moment of terror, every broken mind strengthens their existence. They are predators in a way that nothing else in the universe can be, feeding not on flesh, but on the very essence of reality itself. Some people think demons want to destroy everything, that chaos is just about mindless annihilation. That's not entirely true. Yes, Khorne's warriors will burn a world to cinders, and yes, Nurgle's plagues will rot planets into unrecognizable filth. But chaos doesn't just destroy, it corrupts. A demon doesn't just want you dead. It wants you broken, twisted, reshaped into something else. It wants you to fall so completely into madness and despair that you become part of the warp itself, that you feed it. Death is too simple. Suffering, change, excess, decay. These are what chaos truly desires. And that's what makes them unstoppable. You can kill a demon, banish it, force it back into the warp, but it's never really gone. Its essence lingers, waiting, watching, until the moment it can return. Some demons are so powerful that even when destroyed, they simply reform within their god's domain, unchanged, eternal. That's why fighting chaos is so hopeless. You're not just battling an army. You're fighting against the fundamental nature of the warp itself, against beings that do not die, do not fear, do not stop. They don't need rest or food or air. They exist only to spread their god's influence, and no matter how many times they are cast down, they will always rise again. Some fan theories go even further, suggesting that demons are not just part of chaos, but that they are chaos in its truest form. That the gods themselves are nothing more than vast, interconnected masses of demonic thought, shifting and twisting, using their lesser creations as extensions of their will. If that's true, then every demon is just a fraction of something much larger, something that exists beyond the scope of even the most powerful beings in real space. And if that's the case, then what does it mean to truly defeat chaos? Can it even be done? Or are we just watching the endless, inevitable rise of something that has already won? The truth is, demons are more than just monsters. They are more than just soldiers of the chaos gods. They are hunger made manifest, madness given form, the inescapable reality of a galaxy drowning in war and despair. They don't just exist, they thrive. And as long as there is suffering, as long as there is belief, as long as there is fear, they will never, ever stop. If demons are the heart of chaos, then the chaos gods are its soul. They are the most powerful entities in the warp, vast and unfathomable, each one embodying a fundamental force that has shaped the galaxy since the dawn of time. Unlike mortal gods, they don't need temples or prayers, though they certainly enjoy them. They don't just represent war, ambition, decay, or desire. They are those things. Every battle, every scheme, every moment of suffering or indulgence feeds them, strengthens them, and allows them to extend their influence further. And the worst part, they don't just sit in the warp, content with their power. They are always watching, always whispering, always reaching into the minds of mortals, promising them power, purpose, or salvation, though what they give is anything but. Khorne is the simplest to understand, but that doesn't make him any less terrifying. He is war in its purest form, an unstoppable tide of bloodshed and destruction. He doesn't care about the reasons behind a conflict, only that it happens. Every sword swung in anger, every drop of blood spilled in battle, every moment of fury fuels him. Some see him as nothing more than mindless rage, but that's a mistake. Khorne despises cowardice, trickery, and sorcery. He values strength, the kind that is proven in combat. His demons, the bloodletters and juggernauts, are relentless warriors, existing for one purpose only: to kill. And his most devoted followers, the World Eaters and other berserkers, live in a constant state of bloodlust, caring nothing for politics, strategy, or even survival. They fight because fighting is all they know, all they are. And the scariest thing? Khorne doesn't just rule the battlefield. He thrives in any act of violence. Every punch thrown in anger, every murder, every senseless act of brutality feeds him just as much as a full-scale war. There is no peace with Khorne, only blood and the endless thirst for more. Tzeentch is the opposite of Khorne in every way, but no less terrifying. He is the god of change, schemes, and forbidden knowledge. Where Khorne thrives in mindless rage, Tzeentch revels in manipulation, twisting fate and rewriting reality itself. He is the architect of every grand plan, the puppet master pulling the strings of history, always moving, always shifting, never allowing anything to remain the same for too long. His demons, the Lords of Change and the Pink Horrors, are embodiments of his madness, creatures that exist in an endless state of flux, their bodies shifting and mutating in ways that defy reason. His followers are sorcerers, politicians, and master manipulators, weaving plots so complex that even they don't always understand them. And that's the terrifying thing about Tzeentch. He wants you to think you're winning. He wants you to believe you're in control, that you've outplayed him, only for you to realize far too late that every move you made was part of his plan all along. Some say that even the other Chaos gods don't fully understand him, that his schemes extend beyond even their comprehension. And if that's true, then what hope does anyone else have? Nurgle is, in some ways, the most misunderstood of the four. People think of him as just the god of disease and rot, but he is so much more than that. He is entropy itself, the inevitability of decay, the slow, patient erosion of all things. But here's the twist. He isn't some cackling villain who revels in destruction. He loves his creations. To Nurgle, decay isn't something to be feared. It's something to be embraced. He represents acceptance, the idea that all suffering, all pain, all struggle is pointless, so why fight it? Why not just let go? His followers don't see themselves as damned. They see themselves as blessed, freed from pain, from fear, from the burdens of mortality. His demons, the plague bearers and great unclean ones, are grotesque, bloated monstrosities, but they are also strangely joyful, laughing and playing even as they spread their horrific gifts to the universe. And that's what makes Nurgle so terrifying. He doesn't need to force you to serve him. He just waits. Because sooner or later, you'll grow tired. You'll grow weak. You'll break. And when you do, he'll be there, waiting with open arms, ready to welcome you into his family. And then there's Slaanesh, the youngest of the Chaos gods, and in many ways the most insidious. Slaanesh was born from excess, from the unrestrained desires of the Eldar, and in many ways, Slaanesh is desire itself. But not just pleasure. Slaanesh is obsession, the never-ending hunger for more. More sensation, more beauty, more perfection, more everything. Slaanesh's followers aren't just hedonists. They are addicts, forever chasing an impossible high, constantly pushing the limits of their own bodies and minds in search of something greater. And the worst part? There's always something greater, always a new pleasure to feel, a new height to reach, a new line to cross. And no matter how much they indulge, it is never enough. That is the curse of Slaanesh, endless craving, endless hunger, a thirst that can never be quenched. The demons of Slaanesh reflect this perfectly, the keepers of secrets, with their mesmerizing beauty and hypnotic voices. The daemonettes, both alluring and monstrous, moving with unnatural grace, striking with lethal precision. To look upon them is to want, to desire, to lose yourself in something you know will destroy you, but being unable to stop. That is the power of Slaanesh. Not brute force, not manipulation, but seduction, the promise of pleasure so great that you would gladly sacrifice your soul just to taste it. The Great Four rule the warp, but they are not allies. They are locked in an eternal war, their very natures placing them at odds with one another. Khorne despises Tzeentch's trickery, seeing it as cowardice. Tzeentch mocks Nurgle's stagnation, seeing his acceptance of fate as weakness. Nurgle loathes Slaanesh's obsession with change, for nothing should ever truly grow. And Slaanesh, in turn, delights in enraging Khorne, reveling in excess while he preaches restraint through discipline. This war between them, the great game, is eternal, and it ensures that while chaos is powerful, it is also divided. But here's the horrifying truth. No matter how much they fight each other, no matter how often they betray and undermine one another, chaos always wins. It doesn't need to conquer the galaxy to succeed. It doesn't need to break the Imperium in one final apocalyptic battle. It just needs time. Because chaos is inevitable. Every war, every moment of greed or ambition, every desire, every fear, it all feeds them whether mortals realize it or not. The gods of chaos don't need worshippers. They don't need temples or sacrifices. They only need existence itself. Because as long as mortals feel, chaos will endure, and the Great Four will wait and watch and whisper, because sooner or later, the galaxy will be theirs. There is no greater prize for a mortal who serves chaos than Ascension. To rise above mere flesh, to shed the weaknesses of mortality, to become something more, something eternal. This is the fate of the greatest champions of chaos, the ones who have proven their devotion time and time again, carving a path of destruction across the galaxy in the name of their dark gods. These chosen few are granted the ultimate reward, transformation into a demon prince. And while many might see this as the end of their journey, the truth is, it's only the beginning. Becoming a demon prince is not just about power. It's about submission. To be granted demonhood is to fully surrender oneself to the will of a chaos god, to become a direct extension of their influence. A demon prince is not just a servant, they are a manifestation of their god's desires, a living avatar of their master's will. This means that while they gain near immortality and immense power, they also lose something just as important, their freedom. No matter how great they were in life, no matter how many worlds they burned, or how many enemies they crushed, a demon prince is never truly their own master. They exist to serve, and they do so for eternity. That being said, eternity as a demon prince is hardly a punishment. These beings tower over mortals, their forms twisted and reshaped into something far beyond human comprehension. A Prince of Khorne might become a hulking horned juggernaut, wreathed in fire and blood, wielding weapons the size of tanks with terrifying ease. A servant of Tzeentch may become a shifting, many-eyed horror, a creature of ever-changing flesh and infinite sorcerous power. Nurgle's chosen are bloated monstrosities, radiating disease and rot, their laughter echoing like a funeral bell. And a demon prince of Slaanesh? Imagine something so impossibly beautiful, so hypnotic and alien, that to even gaze upon them is to risk losing oneself entirely. Each prince is unique, shaped by their own journey and the will of their god, a terrifying fusion of what they once were and what chaos has made them. The path to demonhood, however, is anything but easy. There is no single way to ascend. Some rise through sheer martial might, others through dark sorcery, others still through manipulation and corruption on a galactic scale. What matters is that they prove their worth, that they show absolute and unwavering devotion to their god. And even then, there are no guarantees. Chaos is fickle, and for every champion who ascends, countless more fall into oblivion. Fail to impress your patron, and you might find yourself suffering a far worse fate, the dreaded transformation into a chaos spawn, a writhing, mindless abomination doomed to wander the battlefield as a grotesque mockery of what you once were. It's a reminder that chaos does not reward ambition alone. It rewards success. There are theories, of course, about what truly separates those who ascend from those who are discarded. Some say that a chaos god only grants demonhood when a mortal reaches a point where they are no longer useful as they are, when their deeds in real space have reached their peak and their best service can be given in the warp itself. Others believe it's entirely random, that even the most devoted follower can be cast aside, while another, seemingly less deserving, is chosen. Some even whisper that the chaos gods enjoy watching their champions struggle, that they deliberately string them along with promises of ascension, only to rip it away at the last moment, reveling in their suffering. After all, chaos does not care for fairness. It only cares for chaos. Demon princes are not limited to the warp. They can still manifest in real space, either through sorcery, demonic incursions, or the sheer force of their god's will. When they do, they are nearly unstoppable, leading vast armies of cultists and demons, their presence alone enough to shatter the will of lesser beings. They are worshipped as living gods, feared as nightmare incarnate, and hunted relentlessly by those who know what they truly are. The Imperium considers them some of the greatest threats to existence, and with good reason. Where a demon prince walks, devastation follows. But here's the truly horrifying part. Demonhood is not an end. It is merely a step. Because while demon princes are powerful, they are still nothing compared to their gods. They still serve, still exist at the whims of greater beings. And for some, that is not enough. There are whispers of demon princes who seek to rise even higher, who dream of godhood themselves. Be'lakor, the first and greatest demon prince, is proof that it is possible, though his fate serves as a warning to all who would follow his path. Once the favored champion of all 4 chaos gods, Be'lakor sought to claim even greater power, to make himself something more than a servant. In response, the gods cursed him, denying him the ability to manifest in the material realm without their permission, ensuring that he would never again hold true dominion. He is a reminder that no matter how high one rises in the service of chaos, the gods always remain in control. Yet, the hunger for power never fades. There are those who believe that one day, a demon prince will succeed where Be'lakor failed, that one among them will break free from their chains, ascend beyond even the ruinous powers themselves, and become something greater than chaos itself. Whether that's even possible is another question entirely. But if there's one thing chaos thrives on, it's ambition. And as long as ambition exists, there will always be those who are willing to risk everything for the chance to rise above the gods who made them. The path of the demon prince is one of power, of madness, of endless war, and eternal servitude. It is both the ultimate reward and the ultimate trap, a fate that offers everything while taking away even more. To become a demon prince is to embrace chaos in its purest form, to accept that there is no peace, no rest, no true freedom, only the endless struggle for more. And for those who crave power above all else, that is a price worth paying. The warp isn't just another dimension. It's not some alternate plane of existence with its own set of stable rules. No, the warp is something far worse. It is chaos in its purest, rawest form, a place where reality bends, breaks, and reshapes itself based on thought, emotion, and sheer will. Time has no meaning there. Distance is a joke. Cause and effect are just suggestions. In real space, laws of physics dictate everything: gravity, motion, energy, life. In the warp, those laws are optional, and they change depending on who or what is watching. Imagine stepping into a world where nothing stays the same for more than a moment, where the ground beneath your feet isn't solid, but a writhing, pulsating mass of color and thought, constantly shifting into something new. Where the sky doesn't exist, but instead stretches into infinity, a swirling maelstrom of madness filled with screaming faces, rivers of fire, and storms of pure despair. There is no up or down, no fixed points of reference, only an ever-changing nightmare that defies all logic. The deeper one goes, the worse it becomes. And yet, for all its madness, there are structures within the warp, places that exist, if only because the will of the Chaos Gods demands it. The realm of chaos itself is divided into 4 great domains, each belonging to one of the dark gods. Khorne's domain is a never-ending battlefield, rivers of boiling blood flowing between mountains made of bone, the air filled with the constant clash of steel and the roars of demons locked in eternal combat. Tzeentch's realm is a shifting labyrinth of impossible architecture, staircases leading nowhere, doors opening into entirely different realities, ever-changing landscapes that trap even the most cunning minds in an endless cycle of deception. Nurgle's garden is a twisted parody of life, rotting forests, diseased swamps, and festering pits where new plagues are born, all watched over by the bloated, grinning form of the plague god himself. And then there is Slaanesh's domain, a realm of twisted beauty, where pleasure and pain become indistinguishable, where every sensation is amplified to an unbearable degree, trapping souls in an eternal cycle of indulgence they can never escape. Beyond the realms of the gods, the rest of the warp is a vast, chaotic expanse known as the Formless Wastes. Here, nothing is stable, and even the demons themselves struggle to maintain their existence. Some theorists believe that demons, when not summoned into real space or bound to the will of their gods, simply dissolve back into the tides of the warp, only to be reformed later when their masters need them again. Others think that the strongest of them carve out their own miniature realms, imposing a fragile sense of stability within the madness, creating their own dominions where the rules, their rules, apply. There are even rumors of hidden places within the warp, sanctuaries and prisons, where beings of unimaginable power are sealed away, waiting for the day they might be freed. Time is another nightmare entirely. For mortals who enter the warp, time can stretch or compress in ways that make no sense. A journey that seems to take only a few hours in the warp might result in years, or even centuries, passing in real space. Some ships have vanished into the immaterium only to reappear thousands of years later, their crews unchanged, completely unaware that the galaxy they left behind is long gone. Others emerge mere moments after they entered, but with their passengers aged beyond recognition, their bodies racked with the strain of experiencing lifetimes in mere seconds. There are even cases of ships encountering themselves, twisted echoes from possible futures or fractured reflections of their own pasts. The warp doesn't just distort time, it plays with it, twisting it into impossible shapes just for the fun of it. But perhaps the most terrifying aspect of the warp is that it remembers. It is shaped by thought and emotion, which means that everything that has ever happened within its depths leaves a mark. Psychic echoes of long-forgotten battles continue to play out for eternity, doomed warriors reliving their final moments over and over again. The screams of the damned linger in the air like whispers, flickering in and out of existence as if the warp itself is replaying their suffering. Some say that the warp is, in a sense, a living entity, not a singular consciousness, but a vast, shifting sea of thought, memory, and hunger. It doesn't just react to those who enter it, it remembers them, and sometimes it wants them back. For mortals, existing within the warp is nearly impossible without protection. Imperial ships rely on their Geller fields, energy barriers that create a bubble of real space around the vessel, keeping the horrors of the warp at bay. If that field fails, the ship is doomed. Demons will pour in, reality itself will collapse, and in moments, the crew will be lost, either slaughtered, driven insane, or worse, transformed into something else. There are tales of ships emerging from the warp with their crews fused into the walls, their bodies stretched and distorted, their minds screaming in endless agony. Others return seemingly intact, only for their passengers to suddenly start whispering in voices that don't belong to them, their eyes filled with something that is not human. Some beings, of course, thrive in the warp. Demons move through it effortlessly, their forms shifting and adapting to its ever-changing nature. The strongest among them can even impose their own reality upon it, shaping the tides of madness around them to create fortresses, strongholds, entire worlds built from the raw stuff of chaos itself. The most powerful demons, demon princes, greater demons, and the chosen lieutenants of the chaos gods command vast legions in the warp, waging endless wars against one another, vying for dominance in a place where time and space mean nothing. And then there are the things that should not be. The nameless horrors that drift through the depths of the warp, creatures that do not serve the chaos gods, do not fit into any known order, do not follow any rules. Some whisper that these beings are remnants of a time before the ruinous powers, echoes of ancient forces that were long forgotten even by the gods themselves. Others believe they are something new, something forming within the warp, something that even chaos itself does not understand. The immaterium is more than just a tool, more than just a realm of demons and nightmares. It is a force beyond comprehension, a living, shifting entity that defies all attempts to control it. The chaos gods may rule over vast portions of it, but they do not own it. The demons may thrive within it, but even they can be lost to its tides. Mortals may fear it, but they can never escape its touch. The warp is, and it always will be. It is the mirror of the galaxy's collective madness, the shadow cast by every thought, every fear, every desire that has ever existed. And no matter how much the Imperium tries to hold it back, no matter how many safeguards they put in place, the warp is always there, waiting, whispering, hungry. There is a reason why the Imperium fears the warp so much, why entire branches of the Inquisition exist solely to monitor and suppress even the slightest sign of its influence. It's not just because the warp is dangerous. It's not just because psychers are unpredictable. It's because sometimes the barriers between real space and the immaterium fail. And when that happens, when a warp rift tears open, it's not just a hole in reality, it's an invasion. A warp rift is not like an ordinary storm or natural disaster. It is a wound in existence itself, a rip in the fabric of reality through which the horrors of the warp spill into real space. Sometimes they are small, temporary anomalies, distortions that flicker in and out of existence before anyone can even register them. Other times they grow into massive, gaping maws of madness, swallowing entire star systems, cutting off entire sectors from the rest of the galaxy. And the worst of them, the ones that never close, that linger like scars, transforming entire regions of space into battlegrounds where the laws of nature and the madness of the warp exist in a constant, agonizing struggle. How do these rifts form? There's no single answer. Sometimes they occur naturally, if anything in the warp can be called natural, appearing seemingly at random, driven by the shifting tides of chaos. Other times they are created through sheer destruction, when an unimaginable amount of death and suffering occurs in one place. The sheer weight of psychic energy can break the fabric of reality. The fall of Cadia is the most famous example of this. The destruction of the Cadian Gate during Abaddon's 13th Black Crusade didn't just result in a military disaster for the Imperium, it broke the galaxy in half. The Great Rift, the Cicatrix Maledictum, was born from that catastrophe, splitting the Imperium into two and allowing the forces of chaos to spill out like never before. But sometimes, warp rifts are deliberate. Sorcerers, cultists, and chaos worshippers actively seek to tear open reality, performing dark rituals, sacrificing thousands, sometimes millions, of souls in order to create a stable gateway for their masters. A single rogue psyker, losing control, can be enough to trigger a catastrophic breach. There are entire planets that have been lost because of a single mind collapsing under the weight of the warp. That's how thin the veil really is. That's how close we all are to annihilation at any given moment. And when a warp rift opens, what comes through is never the same twice. Sometimes it's a tide of demonic filth, horrors pouring through, slaughtering everything in sight, transforming the land itself into something twisted and unnatural. Other times, it's more insidious. whispered voices that turn entire populations mad, shadows that move on their own, the slow, creeping corruption that takes hold of a world until, without realizing it, the people living there have already become part of the warp's influence. The really terrifying breaches aren't the ones that happen in an instant. They're the ones that happen over years, decades. Entire planetary systems slowly shifting, reality itself warping so subtly that by the time the Imperium realizes what's happening, it's already too late. There are places in the galaxy that are beyond saving, places where the warp has completely overtaken real space. The Eye of Terror is the most infamous, a vast, swirling storm of pure chaos where the laws of reality have no meaning and the traitor legions of the Horus heresy have made their home. The Maelstrom is another, a permanent warp rift that has existed for millennia, a haven for renegades, heretics, and things far worse. And now, of course, there is the Great Rift, stretching across the galaxy like an open wound, flooding the stars with more warp-born horrors than the Imperium has ever faced before. What happens when demons enter the material realm? It depends. Some warp rifts are unstable, brief. Demons manifest only for a short time before being pulled back into the immaterium. But other breaches last for years, centuries. When that happens, the demons don't just invade, they change the world itself. Planets that have been lost to the warp don't just become battlegrounds. They become demon worlds, realms where reality is rewritten to match the will of the Chaos Gods. Some are endless war zones, where Khorne's legions battle eternally, rivers of blood carving through the land. Others are endless, maddening labyrinths, Tzeentch's influence twisting time and space into something incomprehensible. And some are worse. Imagine a world where every surface is alive, where the very air whispers to you, where every sensation is turned up to an unbearable degree, and you never wake up. That is the fate of planets claimed by Slaanesh. That is the horror of a true demonic incursion. And once a world falls, there is almost no coming back. The Imperium's standard response to a large-scale warp incursion is exterminatus, obliterating the planet entirely, wiping out every trace of corruption before it can spread. But even that isn't always enough. There are stories of planets being bombarded into rubble, turned into nothing but floating debris, only for the warp to reform them, reshaping them into something even worse. Because that's the thing about chaos. You can't kill it. You can only hold it back for a while. Some fan theories suggest that the warp is getting stronger, that these rifts are happening more frequently, growing larger, lasting longer. The galaxy is in decline. The Imperium is weakened. The Eldar are a shadow of their former selves, and the psychic energy of 1 trillion desperate souls is flooding into the warp like never before. Some believe that one day, the warp will finally overtake real space completely, that reality itself will collapse, swallowed by chaos in its entirety. Whether or not that's true, one thing is certain. The walls between dimensions are weaker than ever, and the demons are waiting, watching, ready to pour through the next crack the moment it appears, and when they do, there will be no stopping them. The warp doesn't just exist as some distant, untouchable nightmare, locked away in its own twisted reality. No, the terrifying truth is that it's always there, pressing against the fabric of existence, whispering into the minds of the weak, the desperate, the ambitious. And for those who listen, for those who want to listen, the warp offers something that no mortal empire ever truly can: power. Some turn to chaos willingly. These are the cultists, the heretics, the damned souls who want what the warp has to offer. Maybe they seek revenge, maybe they crave strength, maybe they're just tired of the endless suffering and hypocrisy of the Imperium. Whatever the reason, they throw themselves into the service of the dark gods, offering up prayers, blood, and sometimes far worse in exchange for blessings. And chaos does bless its followers, sometimes. A warrior who dedicates himself to Khorne might find himself growing stronger, faster, immune to pain. A sorcerer who whispers his devotion to Tzeentch might unlock knowledge forbidden to all but the most powerful of psychers. The sickly, the broken, the outcasts who pledge themselves to Nurgle often find their ailments replaced with a new kind of life, an unholy resilience that lets them survive wounds that would kill any normal man. And those who offer themselves to Slaanesh? They are given pleasures beyond mortal comprehension, their senses sharpened to impossible extremes, their bodies and minds reshaped into something more beautiful or more monstrous. But the gods of the warp are not kind. There is no true loyalty in chaos, only the promise of power if you are strong enough to take it. And for every cultist who rises, 1,000 more are sacrificed, used up, discarded as nothing more than stepping stones for the ones who will take their place. Chaos does not care about devotion. It cares about results. You can serve it faithfully for years, and if you fail, if you disappoint your patron, then you're done. Best case scenario, you're simply abandoned, left to die as your once great gifts wither away. Worst case, you become a chaos spawn, a writhing, mindless horror, a flesh pile of mutations and agony, a living testament to the fact that chaos does not reward failure. And then there are those who don't choose chaos, those who never wanted anything to do with it, but still fall victim to its influence. A psyker who was simply born with the ability to touch the warp might one day hear whispers in his mind, voices promising him control, safety, power. At first, he resists, but then the voices offer him something more, a way to protect himself, a way to stop the nightmares, maybe even a way to save someone he loves. And before he even realizes it, he's already lost. The moment a mortal accepts chaos, even in the smallest way, it owns them. Entire planets have been consumed this way, not by demonic invasions or brutal warfare, but by belief. One governor makes a desperate pact to keep his world safe. One priest discovers an ancient text that speaks of a hidden truth. One general, sick of fighting endless wars for a thankless imperium, whispers a prayer before battle, just once, not even realizing that someone or something was listening. And from there, it spreads. The seeds of corruption are subtle at first. Small changes, a new cult forming in the shadows, preaching something different than the ecclesiarchy. A noble house rumored to practice strange rituals behind closed doors. Then the signs become harder to ignore. Statues bleed, people disappear, the dead rise. And by the time the Imperium realizes what's happening, the world is already lost. There's an argument among some fans about whether chaos truly corrupts or if it simply reveals. That's the real horror of it. Chaos doesn't always need to change someone. Sometimes it just brings out what was already there. The war-hungry general who always longed for battle. Khorne's got a place for him. The scholar who always needed to know more, no matter the cost. Tzeentch is waiting. The desperate soul who just wants to stop hurting? Nurgle will welcome them with open arms. Chaos doesn't force most of its followers to serve. It gives them what they think they want, right up until the moment they realize the price. And by then, it's too late. But even knowing all this, knowing the cost, knowing what chaos does, people still fall. Because chaos offers something that no other force in the galaxy does. The Imperium demands obedience, servitude, blind faith in a distant emperor who will never answer their prayers. The Eldar cling to a dying past, bound by laws that will never let them change. The Tau preach unity, but silence any voice that dares question their path. Chaos? Chaos offers. It whispers, it tempts, it gives. It does not demand restraint. It does not punish ambition. It does not forbid. It simply asks, what do you desire? And that is why, no matter how many cults are purged, no matter how many demonic incursions are stopped, no matter how many times the Imperium declares victory over chaos, chaos never loses. Because as long as there are mortals who want more, who need more, who crave more, there will always be those willing to listen. And chaos? Chaos is always listening back. At the heart of Warhammer 40k, beneath all the wars, the politics, the endless struggles of empires, there is one truth that cannot be ignored. The warp is always there. It is the shadow behind every throne, the whisper in every dark corner, the lurking doom that no one can ever truly escape. It is not just another enemy. It is the enemy, the ultimate inescapable nightmare of this universe. And its creatures? They are more than just monsters. They are the manifestations of that nightmare, the living proof that nothing is safe, nothing is sacred, and nothing is ever truly free. What makes them so terrifying is that they aren't just aliens or cosmic horrors from beyond the stars. Tyranids, Necrons, Orcs, they are all threats, but they are still things. You can fight them, you can kill them. Even if they are endless, even if they are nearly unstoppable, they still exist within reality's rules. But the creatures of the warp? They are the breaking of those rules. They aren't just invaders. They change reality, corrupt it, twist it into something wrong. When they enter real space, they don't just kill people, they break worlds, they break minds. Demons don't fear death because death doesn't mean anything to them. You can cut them down, burn them, banish them, but as long as chaos exists, as long as emotions exist, they will always return. A bloodthirster slain today will be back in 1,000 years, in 100 years, in 10 minutes if the slaughter is great enough. You don't just have to win against them, you have to win forever. And that's impossible. The Imperium has held them back for 10,000 years, but holding something back isn't the same as stopping it. It's just delaying the inevitable. And it's not just that they are immortal. It's that they are intimate. Tyranids devour worlds, but they don't speak to you. Necrons annihilate civilizations, but they don't whisper in your dreams. The creatures of the warp do. They know you. They know your desires, your fears, your weaknesses. They don't just attack from outside. They creep in. They make you doubt, make you question, make you want what they offer. And the moment you let them in, the moment you listen, they own you. That's what makes them unstoppable. You can have the best weapons, the most advanced technology, the strongest faith. But all it takes is one moment, one slip, one whisper, one desperate prayer, spoken in fear, answered by something that should not be listening. It's not about how strong you are. It's about how long you can last before you break. And even if you resist, even if you fight them off, they will always be there, waiting, watching. Because they know. They know that one day you will be afraid. One day you will be angry. One day you will need something more than what the cold, indifferent universe is willing to give. And when that day comes, they will offer. And no matter how strong you are, no matter how much you resist, somebody will say yes. That is why chaos can never be defeated. Because chaos is not some external force. It's not an enemy fleet or a Xenos empire or even a god that can be slain. Chaos is within us. It is every dark thought, every unspoken fear, every moment of weakness, every desperate wish for something more. It does not need to win battles because it has already won the war. It is inside reality itself, inside us. And as long as there is life, as long as there is emotion, as long as there is thought, the creatures of the warp will always have a way in. This is why they are the greatest horror of the 40k universe, not because they are powerful, but because they are inevitable. No matter how many times they are driven back, they will always return. No matter how many times they are denied, they will always find another way. And no matter how strong you think you are, no matter how much you believe you can resist, chaos is patient. Chaos waits. And in the end, chaos always wins.